Born in Sri Lanka 67 years ago, the Venerable Piyadassi has attained the most senior rank in the Theravada Buddhist order, that of Great Elder or Maha Thero.
Sisters and brothers, the title for today's talk is What is Buddhism? All the living faiths of mankind, in other words, all religions, had their origin in the East. For instance, Christianity from Palestine, Judaism from Israel, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, and several other isms from India, and Zarathustra's teachings from Persia or modern Iran, and Islam, the religion of the Muslims. Their religion is not Mohammedanism but Islam, from again Middle East, Arabia, and China had Lao Tse and Confucius. So you see that all religions originated in the East, and today we have 5 world religions. Let me put them in alphabetical order: Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and Judaism. These are the 5 world religions. Now, what do we mean by a world religion? Generally speaking, a religion that has penetrated to other countries other than the country of its origin is regarded as a world religion. The 5 religions I mentioned have penetrated to other countries. But the mere penetration or the spread is not enough. Also, we can spread the religion by good means as well as ill means. A world religion should guide mankind to both material and spiritual development. When talking about Buddhism, I must say that Buddhism is not just another religion. It's a whole civilization with its historical background, its literature, art and philosophy, its institutions, social, economics and political, ethics and psychology loom large in Buddhism. The Buddha himself called this teaching Dharma Vinaya, that is, doctrine and discipline. Now it is called Buddhism, thus including it among the isms. Buddhism originated in India in the valleys of the Ganges, and the Buddha with his disciples carried this message to many parts of India. Later, about 230 years after the passing away of the Buddha, there was Emperor Ashoka the Great, India. He gave royal patronage to carry this message of the Buddha to other countries. His own son, Mahamahinda Arahapthera, came to Sri Lanka and established the dispensation of the Buddha and introduced Buddhism to Sri Lanka. And then this was carried to Southeast Asia and later to Far East, and thus it spread in the eastern countries. today it's slowly but steadily penetrating into the Western world. But Buddhism never forced others, its teaching on others, did not use iniquitous methods to spread the teaching. Buddhism spread to other countries without disturbing the creeds that were already there in existence. The Buddha's injunction to his disciples was, wander forth for the happiness, welfare, peace of mankind. If that is so, how can you carry the message of Buddha and do harm to people? So there are no religious wars in Buddha's teachings. Always this is a peace-breeding message of the Buddha. And all those messengers of the Buddha up to date, they keep in mind the words of the Buddha, the mandate given to them. Give it for the welfare and happiness and peace of mankind. And now, is Buddhism a religion? This question is often asked. Always it's good to find out the meaning or meanings attached to a word. So if you take the word religion, it's derived from Latin, meaning a bond or a tie between a God or Creator God and his creatures. This word religion applies to all theistic religions very well, because in all theistic religions there is the permanent everlasting God or Brahma, also God who rewards the good deeds and punishes the ill deeds of the creatures of his creation. So all theistic religions are theocentric, in other words, God-centered. As I mentioned in my earlier talk, Buddha was not a God or a Brahma or an incarnation of God. Therefore, his teaching is not theocentric, but anthropocentric, man-centered. You see the difference, sisters and brothers. Do not confuse it. All theistic religions are theocentric around God. Here the Buddha was human being, and therefore his teaching is anthropocentric or man-centered. So the Buddha, through his own experience, understood the importance of the human mind, the supremacy of man, and he attributed all his achievements and attainments to human effort and human understanding and wisdom. So Buddhism is a religion, not in the sense it is understood today, but if you by religion means a way of life, then it is the religion of religions. When we say way of life, one may get the impression, well, it's a way of life, just a moral code. No. It is a moral, intellectual and spiritual development for the progress of the freedom of mind, for the progress of mind, development of the human mind. So, in Buddhism, we have a lot of religion in the teachings of the Buddha as a way of life. Now again, the question is asked, is Buddhism a philosophy? Again, sisters and brothers, try to find out the meanings attached to the word philosophy. Now it is not Latin but Greek. Two Greek words, philos and sophia, love of wisdom, that is philosophy. Going in search of knowledge. Yes, in Buddhism there is lot of philosophies, but for the Buddha there is no philosophy if there is no application to life. We can have intellectual giants, philosophical giants, but what avails us to know all the philosophies without applying it to life? Therefore, in the Buddha's teaching, we must say that there is philosophy, but it must be applied to life. If there is no application, it's like a man who is in the dark and then he lights a lamp and shuts his eyes, does not make use of the light. It's like that. We know a lot, no application. The Buddha emphatically says, what avails you to know the entire teachings of the Buddha if there is no application? It does not matter even if you know just one stanza, just one paragraph, and you apply to life, and that is the philosophy I teach you. And of course, in Buddhism, there is a lot of ethics and psychology. It's not just another religion, but one whole civilization, as I told you. Now, the essence of the Buddha's teaching is the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are the truth of suffering. When you say suffering, you don't like it. William Shakespeare, in Hamlet says, when sorrows come, they come not single spies but in battalions. They do not label Shakespeare as a pessimist. But there are hasty critics who rush to conclusion and say Buddhism is pessimism, and the Buddha was a pessimist. It is neither pessimism nor optimism. If anything at all, it is the realistic view of life and things pertaining to life. So, let us say conflicts or problems. Now, if the Buddha stopped at that, there is suffering. Whole world is in the pursuit of sorrow and suffering. One picture of suffering. We are justified in labeling the Buddha as a pessimist. You know, like a scientist who resolves a limb into tissues and tissues into cells. The Buddha analyzed each and everything right down to their ultimate. He said, if there is conflicts or problems or suffering, there must be causes. Find out the causes. There was a time primitive man thought things are due to no causes, causeless. In an age of science, in an age of technology, we don't accept that. But of course, others say there is just one single cause. But in Buddhism, it is multiple cause. Science too say it's multiple cause. There are more than one cause for anything. So, if there is suffering, there must be causes. And the Buddha finds out the cause. That is what you mean by enlightenment. Now we can easily say there is suffering, there is conflict, and there are the causes. Now we find out that conflicts, the causes and conditions are more subjective than objective. Come from within. Our own greed, our own craving, our own thirsting, our hatred, our ignorance, and so on and so forth, all our defilements. Especially three root causes there are. That craving or greed, hatred or ill will, delusion or ignorance. These are the three root causes. So the Buddha points out, why should there be conflicts and suffering and problems? But there are causes. When there is a problem, sisters and brothers, always the solution is in the problem, not outside. And we want to solve the problem. Why do you want to solve a problem? We are not happy. You understand the point now? When there is a problem, when there are conflicts, we want to solve it because we are not happy. until we solve that problem. So the Buddha goes a step further and say there are causes for this and conditions. When the Buddha said there is suffering, please do not think for a moment that the Buddha denied pleasures. Never. He gave a list of pleasures. And to one disciple he said, Mahali Lichavi, look, if there are no pleasures, will the people go to see things with their eyes, to hear nice things, to taste and to touch? You see, there are pleasures, plenty of them. And he gives the list of them. These are the pleasures you can get. These are the pleasures that a meditator gets. These are mundane pleasures. These are supramundane pleasures, and so on and so forth. And finally, the Buddha says all these pleasures are impermanent, not lasting, not stable, not fixed. How true these words of the Buddha. Robert Burns, the British poet, speaking about pleasures, commenting on pleasures, says, pleasures are like poppy spread. We seize the flower, its bloom is shed, or like the snowfall on the river, one moment white, then lost forever. This is Robert Burns. They are only echoing and re-echoing the words of the Buddha, giving voice to the words of the Buddha. He never denied pleasures. That we must keep in mind. He only said there is relative happiness. Once I was addressing trainee teachers in Denmark. They were all listening. One student was smoking, and he said, we don't want to speak, we don't want to hear about this pain and suffering and conflicts. We are quite happy. I'm quite happy. Then I asked him a simple question. Why do you smoke? I get pleasure. I like it. I enjoy it. Supposing you are deprived of this cigarette now, how will you feel it? Will you be happy? You understand now the point. You are seated there. How long you are going to keep that posture? You feel very uncomfortable after an hour or two. Then you want to walk. How long you are going to walk? You see, pleasure means in a way an interval between two sufferings. I'm not trying to show you that the whole world is one picture of suffering. It's not pessimism. Try to see reality, the realistic view of life. A lot of pleasure, and it is not a defeatist philosophy. Buddha's teaching is not a defeatist philosophy, but radiating joy and pleasure. Now, the Buddha gives the causes, and they are more subjective. You see, sisters and brothers, we create trouble for ourselves. We must know our needs. Today, this technology and science comes and we have plenty of things, really things that we don't need. But people want them. But they don't take all the bare necessities. They want to take more and more and more, even things that we really don't need for our life. And there's no end to it. If we can cut down and lessen our greed, our thirsting for this thing and that thing and one thing and another, if you can cut down, lessen them, we are happier people. To the extent you can lessen them, to that extent we are happy in the world. So happiness is really comes from inside, from our mind, our consciousness. All depends there. And then the Buddha goes a step further and says there is a cure, there is a way out of it. What we call in our teaching, Buddhism, Nibbana or Nirvana, getting away from all these conflicts, all sufferings and problems. And now there is a prescription, the way to get out of it. Just like a doctor, medical physician says, here is an ailment, its cause, its cure and the prescription. So all the conflicts, problems and sufferings, they are ailments really. They are diseases, and they have the causes, and there is a cure, and there is a prescription. Now in the Buddha's teachings, sisters and brothers, the prescription is the Noble Eightfold Path. This is called the Noble Eightfold Path. There are 8 factors 8 factors. Before I come to that, the third one, I said nirvana or nibbana. It is not a thing that we can discuss. You see, the words we use are limited. We are talking of a supramundane state, nibbana. We can say what is not nibbana, but what really it is cannot say, because it is to be realized and not to be theorized. We keep on theorizing. We can write books and discuss and see, but still it's a theory, but you must experience it. Say for instance a man who had not tasted the taste of sugar, how will you explain to him? Will you write a book on the chemistry of sugar and ask him to read it? Will he understand it? He will read the book from beginning to end. He knows the chemistry of sugar but not the taste. Put aside that book and just a little lump of sugar at the tip of the tongue. Here he knows what it is. Experiencing. When you are thirsty, you need something to slake your thirst. Once you do it, you know what it is. You can really explain to others, I'm okay. I have slaked my thirst. I have stilled my hunger. Experiencing. So nibbana or nirvana is a thing to be realized or experienced. And now this eightfold path, and that is the prescription. These 8 factors are right understanding, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. He used the word right through. And why? Because there are the wrong understanding, wrong thoughts, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration. The Buddha speaks about the right. And now, sisters and brothers, these 3, if you really understand these 8 factors, irrespective of caste, color, creed, nation, race, or sex, or with any sort of division, we can follow it. It's not outdated, puerile and jejune. No one can say these 8 factors, you look at them, we can apply to life, both for worldly progress, material progress, and mental development. We can use these 8 factors. If anyone says these are outdated and puerile and jejune, I think only the muddle-headed may say so, not the level-headed. Right understanding something which we need today very much, sisters and brothers, because there is so much of misunderstanding, there is so much of wrong understanding. We really need right understanding. When you say right understanding, it is true wisdom, not knowledge. Knowledge is not so important. We can get knowledge from different sources. Listen to these talks, and watch the television. You read books, transporting knowledge from books. That is not wisdom. Wisdom cannot be transported from books. My wisdom with me, your wisdom with you. It's not a thing that you can share with others. And how true the saying, knowledge comes, but wisdom lingers. Very slowly it comes. You cannot get wisdom overnight. Plenty of knowledge you can get today from records, from these radio, television, books, and so on and so forth. Even children are today very knowledgeable. I don't know how far they are wise. So we must understand, when we say wisdom, true wisdom, or right understanding, we are talking about not knowledge, but real understanding or insight. Real understanding leads to right thoughts. If our understanding is correct and right, then our thoughts are right. If our thoughts are right, our speech is right. If our thoughts are wrong, crooked, then our speech is also not correct. Then our action is right when the thoughts are right. It is our thoughts that we translate into speech and action. In all big cities, there is a reservoir. They protect that reservoir, take care of it. Because when you turn on the tap, we get the water, we are sure that is good water. We also have a reservoir inside our mind, and what is in the mind is goes out either through the speech door or the deed door. If it is polluted, what we say is also polluted. We turn on our tap, open our mouth, there goes the thought in the form of speech. Now you see the importance of right thoughts. And if the thoughts are good, speech and action is also good. Then of course you go a step further. And then we have just these right speech, right thoughts, they are only controlling man's speech and action. We need meditation to control and bring under subjugation our thoughts, our mind. This is another subject, we will deal with it in another talk. So we must understand this noble eightfold path is Buddhism in practice. It is Buddhism in practice. That is the thing that we have to practice. The moral aspect, and then the meditative aspect, and then right understanding or insight or wisdom. So, sisters and brothers, we must understand that Buddhism is just do-it-yourself religion. Do-it-yourself religion. The Buddhas point out the way. Or is like a physician, he will give the prescription, diagnose, find out the ailment and give the prescription. It is left to the patient to make use of the prescription. So it is a teaching that applies to all. Sisters and brothers, we will discuss the subject meditation in our other talks. I thank you very much for your patient hearing. May your upward path be smooth, sure and steady. Sisters and brothers, I come from Sri Lanka, a small island, the tail end of India. My country can give two things to the world. One is the message of the Buddha, and the other one is a very sweet thing, Ceylon tea. I am not here to advertise tea, but to speak a few things about the Buddha and his teaching. So the title for this talk is Understanding the Buddha. I use the definite article D because the word Buddha is not a name but a title like Christ, which means the enlightened one or the awakened one, awakened from the slumber of ignorance. From the Buddha's point of view, ignorance is the worst taint or defilement. It is the crowning corruption of all our madness. So awakened means awakened from the slumber of ignorance. The Buddha came into this world as Bodhisattva. This word we must keep in mind. That's how he was known before he became the Buddha. Bodhisattva. Bodhi means enlightenment. Sattva means adhering to or bent on or aiming at enlightenment, bent on enlightenment. That's how he was known before he became the Buddha. The Bodhisattva was born 6th century before Christ. That's 2,500 and more years ago. One may think, well, 2,500 years ago must have been a very backward period, a backward era. Far from it. History tells us that this century, 6th century before Christ, was remarkable for its social and spiritual ferment in many parts of the country. There was great activities, social and religious, going on. In Rome, the last of the kings had come and gone. In Greece, the tyrants were replaced by a more democratic form of government. And then you come to India, there was Siddhartha Gautama the Buddha and Jaina Mahavira. Come to Persia, or modern Iran, there was Zarathustra, or as the Greeks named him, Zoroaster, with his teaching. Come to China, there was Lao Tse, who had kindled men's mind with his teaching. And there was Confucius, middle of the 6th century. He established a code of ethics based on the customs and traditions of China. So you see that 6th century before Christ was the peak period, or the golden era where religions are concerned. Now, when you speak about Buddhism, a noteworthy characteristic that distinguishes the Buddha from all other religious teachers is that he was a human being, not a god, not a Brahma, not an incarnation of God, not a mythological figure. A human being, a man, but not just another man or another philosopher. He was a man among men. He was a unique being and man par excellence. He became an extraordinary man not because he had a peculiar constitution or body. His body too was made up of blood and flesh and bones. But you know, sisters and brothers, we all have a thing called the mind or consciousness. We can train and cultivate this thing called mind. The Bodhisattva did this not one birth, 2 or 100, many births. He cultivated the mind, and he cultivated and practiced 10 essential qualities of high standard. They are known as the paramita, the perfections: charitable giving, morality, renunciation, wisdom, effort, forbearance or patience, determination, truthfulness, love, and equanimity. These are the 10 essential qualities of high standard which a bodhisattva cultivates or practice to attain enlightenment. Now, when we say the Buddha was a human being, he had human parents, he had a wife, his father was a king ruling a certain section part of North India, and he was married to another princess, Yasodhara, and he had a child, Rahula. The king was doing his best to keep the son tied to the world, because the king Suddhodana, father, wanted his son to succeed him. But the Bodhisattva's mission was different. He was in the palace, not very happy. As he advanced in age, he glimpsed the woes of the world, and he was thinking of a way how to get away from these tangles, suffering, pain, anguish. Yasodhara, his wife, the princess, knew that the Bodhisattva loved her. Oh, the Bodhisattva prince loves me, but he loves something else which I do not know. And his thought runs to that thing he loves like a dove flies home. The Bodhisattva was all the time thinking of the way of getting away from these tangles to get at enlightenment and truth. And now the Bodhisattva, Siddhartha Gautama, His personal name was Siddhartha and his family name was Gautama. He found it difficult to leave the palace. He didn't care for the crown. He gave up that crown which held the promise of power and glory. But the most difficult thing for him was to leave behind his wife and child. But he made up his mind. He was with firm determination. He thought to himself, it's really a barrier, but I must go. Otherwise I can't attain enlightenment and find out a way to get away from this tangle. If I go and get at enlightenment, I can be of help to mankind, bring peace and happiness and freedom to mankind, including my wife and child. With great difficulty, he tore himself away and went into sylvan solitude as an indigent ascetic. This is the greatest adventure for me. This is the greatest adventure, to give up all that, discarding and disdaining the enchantment of royal life. He went away. And he lived the life of an ascetic. He went to all the meditation masters of the day and he studied under them all types of yoga. That's why after he became Buddha, he was able to tackle all these yogic problems with those who came to see him. And then he found out what they had to teach him was not sufficient. Their range of knowledge, their ambit of mystical experience was insufficient. And the Bodhisattva was not satisfied anything short of enlightenment. So the Bodhisattva bade goodbye to those masters and went his own way, searching for new paths. He also practiced for 6 long years with 5 others self-mortification or self-torture. Because there's a belief in India, even today, the belief